those first couple shirts will be sick because, I mean, we got a lot of money that we're having to spend for the R&D, but we want to be very transparent with that because we want this to scale beyond us. We want to grow our business, but we want to share this. We want other people. We would like to see a Nike be able to dye with this purple dye if it works out. We're not locking it up because ultimately we know if a brand does this purple dye, then everybody wins. You know, it's better for the environment. It's better for the farmer. We want other people to succeed with our model, and that's why we're big into transparency. We're happy to share this with people.
I appreciate you being here with me on the Social Entrepreneurship and Innovation podcast. For folks who are unfamiliar with you and the work that you do, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes, Corey. Again, thanks for the opportunity to jump on this podcast. But I'm Eric Henry, president of TS Designs. We're based in Burlington, North Carolina. And I like to describe myself. I've been on this, fortunately, planet for 63 years and have been part of TS Designs for about 43 years. So we're focused on domestic apparel manufacturing in a transparent and equitable supply chain, of course, made in the U.S.
Excellent. Well, and thank you so much, Eric, for taking the time to chat with me. I'd as well love to get a full overview. And maybe this isn't even the complete extent of everything you're involved with, but I do know as well that you started a brand in 2020 called Solid State Clothing, more to focus on a B2C approach as compared to TS Designs, which is business to business. But I'm curious to know what was the motivation, the impetus for starting Solid State, especially in 2020, which I think is a very interesting time to start up a new business.
Well, Corey, I think we actually need to go back to January 1, 1994, because that's really had driven me to where we are today, both personally and business. And prior to that, I had built with my business partner, who's since retired, but active in the business, what they call a large volume contract screen printer. So our clients are Tommy, Nike, Gap, Polo. Over 100 people worked here at TS Designs, ran 2 to 3 shifts. But prior to NAFTA in 94, it was pretty much everything was made in the U.S. I always like to say, to give you an idea, and way before your time, is in the early 90s, Nike Apparel headquarters was in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the reason that was, this is where apparel was made in this country. We grow the cotton here, we process the cotton to fabric, and we make the apparel. So very successful company, got us into this location, 20,000 square feet. We were growing. The banks loved us. We were profitable. Everything was good. Again, NAFTA rolls in January 1, 1994. Within 2 years, all those brands left, and our workforce dropped to about 12. I realized then there's something more than a business and a bottom line. I realized too, there's something wrong when you go outside of your market for a product or service your market deliver. You know, we can make apparel here, but we decided to, as a country, and really the time we are, is we got opened up and exposed to that global economy and realized things were a lot cheaper. But at that time, we thought that, you know, it would benefit everybody. Well, we see where that's gotten us. It's actually, I think, especially in the apparel industry, is now we have flipped from pre-NAFTA to 90% made in the U.S. to now we're about 97 to 98% made overseas. And that's all driven by one thing: chasing cheap, usually unsustainable cheap labor. But we decided not to participate. We decided to stay here, and we had to change our directions because, you know, obviously we were not going to be a low-cost producer. So first of all, we changed the mission of our company to be successful while simultaneously looking after people, planet, and profit. Triple bottom line, sustainable business model. And when you talked about that in the mid-90s, people just had a glazed over look. You know, what's triple? You know, business is about making money. And again, profits are important. That's what keeps the lights on, and that's what keeps moving forward. But we learned early there's more to it than that. And again, when you fast forward to today, and I think a lot of the issues that we're faced with, both impacting society, impacting planet, are driven by companies that are just focused on maximizing that bottom line. And we've got to start taking a more responsible, holistic view of a business's responsibility to society as a whole. So we focused on creating the highest quality, most sustainable printed apparel. And that's the journey we've been on ever since. And that's the journey we're still on today. I can go a little bit deeper in what that journey's looked like up to COVID, because I think COVID was another wake-up call, just like NAFTA was, in the weakness of a global supply chain that's built around just price. And not to say we didn't have our challenges with supply chain, but at least I don't have to worry about that ship that's stuck out on the coast of LA coming in with stuff that I ordered 6 months ago. Literally, I can get in my car and see everybody within a couple hours of the product we made. But I can ramble. I want you got to keep me on track here, Corey. That's your job.
You bet. Well, we'll get into the supply chain topic here in a bit. But I'm curious, what had you have the courage and vision at that point to where the entire apparel industry was headed the other direction, going global, seeking, as you mentioned, unsustainable, cheap labor and ultimately products? What had you feel so confident that you could essentially, as I understand it too, you had to kind of reinvent TS Designs as a business as it was? What made you so confident and steadfast in that vision when everything else was headed the other direction?
Well, what I like to say, Corey, a lot of things in life is right place, right time, or being lucky. And those values of a triple bottom line were just already there at TS Designs. We didn't think about it as a triple bottom line because, again, prior to NAFTA, we could do those things like care for the employees. We've never paid minimum wage. We've always had some kind of benefits around retirement or health care. But that was just, my business partner and I felt that way about employees. The thing about the environment, again, just by chance, when I was growing up in Burlington and the house my mom still lives in, I got interested in, growing vegetables, and this is it inside an urban area, and there was no farming. I just got interested in it. So now we're going back into the 70s. And back then it was organic gardening by default. We didn't have the chemicals that we have today. So I got introduced to vegetable gardening. I got introduced to the, love of the environment. I guess I was an early tree hugger. So when we moved in this location, and this would have been a couple years before NAFTA, we bought 4 acres, and if you come here one day, you'll see literally planted forest out here. And so we brought those values of people, planet, and profit to this industry, which is high volume contract screen printing. But since we were competing in a domestic market, we were able to have those values and do those things, and compete. And the brands, I said, like the Nikes and Tommies, they thought it was cool. But at the end of the day, they just would say, as long as you compete with so-and-so or so-and-so in the US, you're fine. So it was, they were aware of it, but really didn't care about that. So we had those values, prior to our business get destroyed by NAFTA. And when that happened and we were looking, what are we going to do? We just said, let's just bring those values together and run a business that way. And again, there was a few other people, Paul Hawkins, I can't remember Ray Anderson. There was a group of people that were starting to talk about this idea of a triple bottom line and the business responsibility of people and planet. So really took a deep dive in understanding that better. And took us about, a couple years to kind of figure out what we're going to do. And it was very hard years because the business left us, and there was really, everybody was focused in how do we make it cheaper and with no regard to the impact people or planet. So again, Corey, just lucky that I came to the table with that, the values of care for the environment. And then we also the care for employees. So we just kind of I guess when NAFTA did it allowed us to connect the dots. And I like to tell people too, I'm not sure we would be down the path we're down today as far as we are if it wasn't for NAFTA. Again, I think, and we'll talk more, I'm sure, about COVID, how that's been another wake-up call with the weakness of global supply chains. But that really got us on our way, and we've just, we've been on that path ever since.
And so what was it about NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, for folks who may not be super familiar? What was that? What was it about it that unlocked the globalized economy? Like, what sort of factors and policy changes were enacted that just opened this bottle that has now produced what we see today?
Right. And there's been a lot of trading. There were some trade agreements prior to that, but this was the first major trade agreement. It was between Canada, United States, and Mexico. And essentially what it did is, prior to that, there were all kinds of tariffs and duties to do things in these other countries, and they just eliminated it. The thinking at the time was, the marketplace would dictate winners and losers, which I have no problem with the marketplace. But if the marketplace is only letting price dictate that, and literally we're competing, again, Canada is more of a developed economy, and Mexico is considered a developed, no, I'll get it right here. One is developed, one is developing, but it was two different economies. So when you look at Mexico, they had much, much cheaper labor rates. And that was, we knew that, but what the underlying is, they pretty much did away with all environmental regulations between the two. So essentially the rules that they had to play in Mexico were different than the rules they play in this country here. So, we know it wasn't going to be a level playing field when it comes to labor. But what they did is pretty much says, we'll let the marketplace, dictate the winners and losers. And essentially what happened almost overnight, literally within months, I was down in Mexico City and seeing a plant that was, the first thing that went was the cut and sew of the T-shirts, and then what's in the T-shirts in the U.S. So I go down there and I can see, you see the writing on the wall. It's if they're making the shirts in Mexico, which much, much cheaper labor rate U.S., you knew all the other attributes of the printing and the packaging stuff would follow. And we were right, I guess, at ground zero of the textile industry was North Carolina. And so we saw the devastation quickly of both businesses and jobs as things, just much over it. Ross Perot said that giant sucking sound literally happened. And I think even the experts thought, it was going to take time to level this thing out. It was devastating, especially to our community. And the thing about it, if you weren't directly associated with the apparel industry or knew somebody in it, you just saw the thing, hey, I get cheaper clothes. This is great. I can buy more stuff. But on the other end, if you're the company that's trying to supply that, you pretty much lost that business overnight. And that's what happened to us and a lot of businesses around here. But it was, and then there's been many, many other trade agreements since NAFTA. But my biggest, and again, I have no problem with global competition. But I think we have to look at a global competition on also not only a price standpoint, impact the people and impact planet. And again, it's no different what's happening today with the trade agreements that we have with pretty much, countries around the world. We are not, very rarely do we hold them to any type of people planet regulation. That's why we got the Uyghur situation in China. That's why we got a question about organic cotton out of India. And in their own countries, they got their own rules and stuff, but it's, and I don't have the answer to how to fix that, but that is something that a lot of times we don't realize the other side or the downside of globalization, which is things are typically not made aware of us until it's too late. And again, I get the best example of that. God, this has probably been, 6-8 years ago is when they had the the largest apparel disaster in history where over 1,000 people died in this building in Bangladesh. Everybody said, oh my God, how does that happen? And I says, look at what we're paying. And again, this is a few years ago. I think the average labor rate was 26 cents an hour. And what happened out of that, Corey, is no company was ever held personally responsible because they would work with their agents and stuff like that. So there wasn't a brand company over there. But I says, the blood's still in the hands because you're in Bangladesh for one thing, to take advantage of that cheap, unsustainable labor, which gets you into in a developing country like that. A building that was 8 stories that should never have been built was built and collapsed, and 1,000 people died. And but then fast forward today, we got the Uyghur situation in China. That's the problem with globalization and opaque marketplace is you lose that visibility. And we keep asking, how's this happen? Happen because this is the world we live in.
Yeah, and I think what you're referring to is the Rana Plaza disaster in Bangladesh in 2014, which it was absolutely devastating. And I'm wondering in which you made mention of there's not necessarily an issue for you with competing in a global marketplace. Are there scenarios in which the playing field is in fact level? I think I've heard you mention in different conversations, and I guess now as well it applies if we're talking about labor, those examples, Rana Plaza, and then as well in China right now. The U.S. has different regulations, obviously, environmental regulations, labor practices, and regulations. Is there a scenario in which the global marketplace is able to be on this same level playing field, subject to the same regulations and practices, or is that the difficulty of it, is that it's just perhaps too complex to regulate in that way?
Well, Corey, what I advocate and what I think, because we do have this great thing called the internet, which works most of the time, is one of the first thing we should require is full transparency. The challenge we have with the apparel industry, even if you say made in USA, what does that mean? We need to have transparency of the whole supply chain of where the materials come from and the manufacturing, because to me, by transparency, you have kind of self-regulation. I've got a Patagonia, we can get into old microplastics. So many things wrong with this is, microplastics is 4 or 5 years old. And I'll get it here. It's going to probably say made in Vietnam. Well, that's good. But what I want to know, where in Vietnam this was made. I want a location. I want a contact. I want a phone number. The chance of me going to Vietnam are probably about 0. But if the chance I do that, I want to have that. And we've done that because with our supply chain, and which is at WHERE and we've been doing this for over 10 years. And now we have a QR code that does this. But when we say our supply chain is transparent, I will introduce you to everybody in the supply chain, the farmer, the ginner, the spinner, the knitter, the finisher, the cut. So I give you a picture, phone number, physical address, and email. The most transparent supply chain that I know of. And fortunately, we do that in the Carolinas. But there's no reason that the Nikes, the Tommies, the Gaps, the Polos, or whatever, Adidas, give you that information too. I mean, that should be the first requirement. If you're going to sell product in this country here, you have to disclose the supply chain who made that product, because by disclosure, you're basically asking people to not only trust you, but you're letting essentially it's a check and balance, because if I'm willing to make my supply chain, I'm obviously, not to say there's not going to be mistakes and things like that, but most likely I'm not going to do anything that's completely, fraudulent, illegal, or ethical or whatever. If I'm going to just here it is, this is who we are. And then in the back, we're, burning rubber tires. I won't do that. I'm not going to give you that, make it that easy for you. But I think that's the first thing that we do to start leveling the playing field is, this full disclosure, full transparency. And I will call bullshit on bullshit when they say, well, God, that's our competitive edge. there is a lot that happens from in the back of this room here. You can see is a painting of the cotton field that we work with a farmer 60 miles away. And so there's a lot happens from that cotton field to this t-shirt that we wear that's on this table here. So just having access to that supply chain is not going to put you in business without throwing a lot of money at it.
And so what sort of trend do you see as it relates to the level of transparency in fashion and apparel right now? Do you see that it is increasing, that brands are starting to open up a bit more with where products are made and in what conditions? Or is there still a big blockage?
Well, I think there's two things going on, Corey. There's first of all, people that use the environment as a marketing tool. I always like to say it's the check boxes, it's organic, check it off and put it out on the website and promote the heck out of it. It's fair trade, check box, put on the website. So unfortunately, there's a lot of people that use that as marketing to try to capture market share. But then there's other companies that are, committed to this triple bottom line, committing to do it better, really care. And unfortunately, I think a lot of the apparel companies of the future will not be the apparel companies of the day. And the biggest reason for that is, let's go back to NAFTA, that wage differential between made in Mexico and made in USA. There was a wage differential, but that has only grown. Back to the Bangladesh situation. I think Mexico maybe was a couple bucks. And at that time, I say minimum wage in this country was $6. So now you still got that Bangladesh wage of under $1. People are still making apparel for under $1. And then when, the focus, we didn't call it time, we call it now a living wage, say living wage of $15. So that gap has just got wide. So what has happened I see a lot of the major apparel brands, they've kind of baked that into their model. We're going to make it for this, the margins, however you want to say it. So it's, and that's why we typically avoid the big brands, because they will do a program mainly for a marketing story. But there's no big commitment to make that transition to a more sustainable, domestic, transparent supply chain. It's marketing. And so we have more success and traction with companies that start at that value and build, instead of trying to regress back or change back to what it used to be, before NAFTA. Because before NAFTA, all the major brands, they were U.S. companies, U.S. made, but they have become very, it's baked into their business model about utilizing offshore labor.
Well, and that's what I really appreciate about the call for transparency is, as you mentioned, a few pieces in the marketing messaging and communications, is that with a more transparent supply chain, transparency just behind the where and the how products are made, it at a minimum brings the conversation into more objective terms. Sustainability's become more popular, social responsibilities become more popular in the business sense, but they haven't exactly been defined, it seems. And so I do really appreciate transparency at a minimum, starting to say, like, objectively, yes or no, is this sustainable? Yes or no, is this business model in fact ethical? And so, Eric, I'd appreciate if you could walk us through what is the supply chain, so we can get a sense for it in our heads, that TS Designs operates on your other business, Solid State Clothing, because I think that there is some sort of belief that made in America or a hyper local supply chain in this type of global economy is impossible. I think that people have a lot of disbelief around its possibility, but I'd be curious to hear what is the supply chain, if you wouldn't mind walking us through it at an overview for TS Designs and Solid State.
What we do and what our focus is I say, make the highest quality, most sustainable printed t-shirts. And we were very fortunate. We're very lucky. That supply chain of growing the cotton, ginning the cotton, spinning the cotton, knitting it to fabric, finishing the fabric, cut and sew, all those things happen outside of TS Designs. Now, we facilitate that process because we go all the way back to the farmer and buy the cotton. And again, that's what we started about 15 years ago. We did that, Corey, so we could participate in that supply chain instead of sitting here at the end, which you can buy t-shirts all day long from distributors, but you don't have that transparency or control. So we, go to the cotton farmer. Now we do, as we like to say, before the seed goes in the ground and commit to how many pounds of cotton we're going to buy. And then we have somebody on our team that facilitates that process from the field to the gin to the spin to the knit. So, and one thing going back to the globalization, when the industry left this country, the growing of the cotton didn't leave. Where the cotton ended up left. What I mean by that is prior to NAFTA, the majority, the number I heard was 80+% stayed in this country. Now 80% plus, because we grow great cotton here, leaves this country. Now it could leave in yarn or fabric or whatever, but it's basically heading out of here. So we had all those assets here. Unfortunately, the higher labor side, things that what I say have buttons and zippers, required more labor. So that left our country quicker. Not only the skill left, the equipment left. So our industry is struggling to do those more. I think we're doing pretty good in the making of the jeans. That market's coming back and it will come back, but it just takes a higher level of investment in equipment and people to bring it back to make those other apparel products fine. So we're just fortunate, we focused on t-shirts. We have all the resources and infrastructure here to make those. And our focus is continue to make it, better from the standpoint of our transparency, our transportation footprint. And we can talk about this cool purple dye that's sitting on my desk, which is one of the newest things we're involved with, plant-based dyes. So I like one of my taglines I've used for a long time is sustainability is a journey, not a destination. So we will continue to make a better product that has a better environmental impact, a better quality, and as small transportation footprint as possible. But again, a lot of things I said earlier, we're just fortunate that those assets were here. It'd be a little bit tougher story if, I was born and lived in North Dakota, and because those resources just don't exist in North Dakota, from the cotton field to the cut and sew, but they do exist here in the Carolinas.
And so from and I'd love to get to the plant-based dyes here in a minute, but from the consumer side, but what do you see as like in today, in 2020, the implications of purchasing, a product made in America or a product made locally?
Well, I'm hopeful. I had a conversation earlier today with a school out of Charlotte, which is about 60 miles away from here, that we're going to do a tour in March, I believe, coming up. I'm having a lot of hope when I talk to, younger folks, elementary, high school, college, that have been here long enough. They realize that some of the path that we've gone on doesn't work, and how do we build a better future? So, to me, it starts with an educated consumer and then giving because that's what we say, our best customer educated, started giving those tools. So I am hopeful that some of the things that we have, or paths that we have gone down in my generation, are going to be, and again, we're not going to put that genie back in the bottle when it comes to globalization, but we have an opportunity. And again, the COVID thing it was another wake up call to that. We can do some things in a more local, connected, and ultimately a more resilient. I think that's, I like resilient over sustainability, because we're going to, maybe my lifetime, your lifetime, whatever, that we'll have some other global disruption down the road. And, again, as I said, we're not going to put that genie back in the bottle of globalization, but there's certain things that we can do a better job with. And one thing we do where we are in the Carolinas is the ability, the tagline that we use is dirt to shirt. We have it all right here. The only thing's keeping us from doing that is the marketplace is saying you get it cheaper somewhere else. But when that's somewhere else, you can't get it, or that somewhere else is a planet problem, i.e. they're just dumping the chemicals out the back and killing people, or it's a people side. They're basically indentured servants making apparel. This is a more resilient model. And I think COVID definitely bared that out.
Could you say more about the experience COVID had and maybe what, overlap that had to the wake up call of NAFTA?
Sure. I never forget, I was on a plane, February 2020, and coming back from that was my last trade show till about 3 weeks ago. And I had a good friend who was also coming back, who was he does grass-fed beef. He's a retired surgeon, and he was reading some medical journal. And he texted his wife, and his wife texted my wife because they were next neighbor, and it was reading about this one case in Seattle. And he was reading something into that article, said this could be serious. Well, you know what happened in March? We started locking down. And so it was tough. We had a lot of our customers basically stopped doing business. But we went back to the values of people and planet. When we got into the face mask, we went to our values of how do we do it for the people and planet. So we utilize our irregular t-shirts. We use cut and sew about 30 miles away, and we got to the mask business. And the thing that COVID really allowed us to do, because we never made masks before, and the first couple of masks we made sucked. We know what we're doing, but we were able to do real-time product development because everything was right here. So even the height of COVID and the lockdown and shutdown and all that, I was able to get in my car, drive 30 minutes, sit in a masked room with some people and continue. So I think our mask went through like 12 design changes. And this is a very old beat up one that unfortunately people won't get to see on a podcast, but it's a great mask. It clips over the ears. It drops around the neck. It's got a nose piece. It's got a filter pocket. So we're able to do these real-time changes. The other thing we're able to do as the COVID ebbed and flowed, we were able to manage our inventory. I don't have to worry about 10,000 masks on a container ship and all of a sudden the government's giving them away now. I think our mask inventory might be less than 100. But we could gear back up and gear down. So we're able to take all these advantage of a local connected supply chain and do that. So I use the face mask is a model that we show other people in t-shirt. And because prior to COVID, and I guess that period of time between NAFTA and COVID, people would always get tripped up on the price. They always fall back. Oh my gosh, great story, cheaper price, blah, blah. What COVID allowed us to do is said, okay, well, yeah, we're more expensive, but we deliver. And we might've been slower and we're still having, right now we're experiencing a COVID issue is we do some manufacturing on the West Coast. And typically that's 4 to 5 days. And we've got a shipment that's taken us 3 weeks due to just, people being out, the weather, comments. So don't get me wrong. We have had our COVID issues, but it's much better than those people that were making stuff in Asia that couldn't get there at all and had no idea where it was, how it was shipped, cost of container, all of that. So it's been tough on us, but people at least we've got the pieces are a lot more manageable. They're a lot closer. And so I think the people that were our customers, potential customers that saw that price issue, price has become, again, still something we have to talk about, but the ability to deliver has allowed us to have a conversation with a lot more people. So it's opened up a lot more doors than we had pre-COVID. And so we're excited about the opportunity to say, instead of, think about jumping back in what you just did and making that product overseas somewhere. Let's see the value of making it here and having a more flexible, connected, transparent supply chain. So it's definitely, don't get me wrong, last couple of years have been very tough for us, but I think it has opened a lot of opportunities that would not have been there without COVID.
Hmm. And so do you think with that wake up call just to industry overall, things will trend more local over time? Like, is that, do you see more people recognizing that level of resilience that a localized supply chain can provide is worth investing in, with price less so a consideration? Are we going to see more products of all industry made in the US?
If I have anything to do with it, Will. And again, that's one reason, you said earlier, TS Designs for 40 some years is business to business. And one thing that came out of COVID was solid state clothing. So we could create that direct to consumer brand. So we could go right to the consumer with our story, with our innovation. Yes, it's small, but we want to, not get lost in the filter of working through a larger brand that does or doesn't want to tell that story. And so that's what super excites me about the combination of technology, i.e. we can reach, I love to tell people at one time, our form of advertising was the yellow pages. Hell, you probably don't know what yellow pages are. And literally we had one meeting a year with the yellow page rep. It would come to our office and we would decide on the yellow page we would put in certain, again, we could only do North Carolina because you'd have to pay for every city you went to. And it was, a once a year, day-long meeting, determine what our ads were going to look like in these different yellow pages. And then again, fast forward to the day and where we are with access to. So, I get emails, talking to somebody in Norway, talking to somebody in Belgium, talking to somebody. So, a better platform. We developed Solid State so we could have that platform to connect with a larger audience. Because back to TS Designs, a lot of people love our story, but they can't. Why do they need 200 t-shirts or 300 t-shirts? But they can buy one t-shirt that it's got the quality, the story, the transparency, the innovation. And so that is a big focus of 2022 is getting that platform out there. As we talk about, educate the customer, get them thinking, why do we do the things that we do? Is not only to make a better quality product, but basically have a better people and planet impact. And we were not able to do that as much as we wanted to with TS Designs that we can do with Solid State because we control that narrative.
And so what has the response been thus far to Solid State?
It's been good. We did a very soft rollout during COVID. We've never been in that direct to consumer market. And, but the customers that we've connected with, love it. Don't question the price because they understand the story. And now we are talking to people that have the knowledge and the ability to really, expand this thing, because I think at the end of the day, we went to our first trade show since February 2020, the end of January. And the thing said, the best t-shirt. And I said, the only thing I wish we would have changed, and people will come to us and say, it's the best damn t-shirt. And I can say damn best t-shirt because transparency, carbon footprint, quality, the dyes, the manufacturer. Bring it. I don't know any other brand that brings the values to the table they bring to the table. And if they do, let's learn and let's figure out, because again, there's always room for us to make a better shirt. But I don't know anybody that does it in 600 miles in the transparency that we do and makes the quality that we do anywhere. So, I'm ready for that 101 competition. Now, if you're just going to bring, I always tell people, if you're only going to bring price to the table, if that's all you're interested in, then sure, you're going to win. I'm not, but if you want to bring price, people, planet to the table, I'm ready to talk, and I think we'll win that battle. And hopefully we'll win the war, because what we want to do, Corey, is we want to get people thinking about right. Why do I look at clothes and investment and not just a price of something I pay and then 6 months down the road I'm going to throw away.
So do you see this as setting the standard of like sustainable or more, as you saw it, resilient apparel? You have the lower footprint, you're focusing so much on quality, which is obviously a huge topic of conversation, and the localized, very close in proximity supply chain. Do you feel like that's where the standard is as of late?
I mean, obviously I'm not going to live forever. Obviously I'm much older than you are, but that would be one thing, as I leave this planet, is that I've at least raised the bar, because I saw the bar get devastated through globalization. I saw the bar just get raced to the bottom. How do we make it cheaper so we benefit a few and hurt a lot? So I just want to change that landscape and, raise the bar from the standpoint of full transparency, full disclosure on how apparel's made. And I'm definitely one of those people, Corey, is I'm not interested in per se changing regulations so it can only be, made USA, whatever. I want, at the end of the day, in the country and the economy we live in, it is your choice. All I want to do is when you have that choice, you got full information, full disclosure. I'm not stopping you from buying those cheap t-shirts at the dollar store. That's totally up to you. And there's reasons why I do that. I'm not going to do that, but I just want to have the consumer to have full information of what they're buying. And then ultimately it's their decision. It's the fast food store. I always like to say, about a mile down there, I have a Wendy's, and my lunch today is consider these nuts right here. So there's times I will end up down there because it's fast, it's cheap, but also that's not good for me. It's not good for the planet. It's not good for the people working there. So at least I'm thinking about the impact I'm getting ready to have. But all we want to do is just make that information much, much more available to the consumer so they can make a better judgment on when they make that purchase.
And so speaking to the standard or the bar of where that is, we mentioned the plant-based dyes earlier. What's next for TS Designs? Like on this journey of sustainability, as you mentioned, where does TS Designs and solid state still have to go? Maybe the dyes are part of that. Like what else do we have to achieve?
Well, we got 3 big initiatives this year. But part of those 3 initiatives go back to what happened probably 5 years ago. And again, we're always learning. And about 5 years ago, I learned about microplastics and the challenge with when you take synthetics and you wash them, those bits of plastic don't biodegrade. They just get small and they're in us now. So we're only natural fiber focused. But again, I'm talking to you on my 100% polyester. But I know now, so we don't participate in synthetics. So that would be, right now it's cotton. We're doing a lot of stuff with wool. We've been on a 5-year journey to do domestic hemp production. Hoping 2022 will be the year we get hemp over the finish line. First with socks and then with t-shirts. A side note with hemp, 2 big benefits. Benefit for the environment, more yield per acre, less inputs per acre, and a faster growing season. Hemp plays well with cotton from the standpoint it adds durability. So adding 30% hemp into a cotton t-shirt is going to make for a more durable, longer lasting t-shirt. So that's one thing that we're focused on, getting hemp finally that we've been struggling. Again, we can buy a great hemp product out of China. Could have done it 5 years ago, do it today. But we realize what I say earlier, if the market or product could be done here, then we're cheating the system. So we're focused here and hopefully that will happen. The next thing I talked about is we're starting to look at plant-based dyes. We right now, overwhelming majority of the work that we do and probably the shirt that you have on and it uses synthetic dyes. Challenge of synthetic dyes is what they are. They're synthetic dyes, usually fossil fuel based, and they're not made in this country. So, but again, I like to say sustainability you've got to start somewhere. You can't wait to the perfect world and get into it. This is where we are. So it was interesting in 2019, we had made a commitment to make the dive into plant-based dyes, and we're going to work with a company out of Seattle. In the spring of 2020, this thing called COVID came in, squashed that. We brought it back last year. We brought somebody on our team that has that knowledge. We reconnected with the group in Seattle. Matter of fact, they're coming in town this weekend for a 3-day project. So we launched the plant-based dyes. Challenge with plant-based dyes, you got to start somewhere, but the majority of the plant-based dyes are extracts from outside this country. So the first one we did was using, again, we're local focused. We took black walnuts out of my backyard of my farm, took them to Fermented Beer Works, which is a cooperative brewery I helped start, 3,000 owners, 10th cooperative brewery in the state. We took the walnuts down there. We brewed them down. We took the black dye to our garment dye facilities, which that's also one of the last ones in the South because everybody's focused on volume, and garment dye allows us to do small batches. And we produced through Solid State a North Carolina cotton, North Carolina made, dye with black walnut t-shirt. So we're doing that. And then this jar here, which I can't, again, podcast can't, so it's a purple dye. I can't tell you the plant right now because that'll be at 3 weeks from now. But it's a North Carolina plant that has also food benefits, potential beer benefits, a purple dye benefit. So we'll hopefully in 3 weeks, we'll be dyeing with a dye that's grown, dyed here on North Carolina cotton. So we're in that. The third thing that we're working on this year, and it points back again, going back, this idea of the conversation circular economy. What happens at the end of life? This is a fairly new area for us, but something responsible. Instead of throwing it away, what do we do with it? Well, there's working with a couple of platforms there. One is material return, which is the mechanical process of breaking the fibers back down and then respinning it. And then there's another company in Danville, Virginia called CIRC, CIRC.earth, which has a closed loop green chemistry that actually chemically breaks it back down, creates the cellulose to re-extrude the yarn. So we're very, involved with that. And then part of that is actually taking some of our cotton scraps from making our t-shirts this year and then grinding those down and blend those in with virgin cotton. So, hopefully by 2023, when we make that 100% cotton t-shirt here, white, 10% of that will be cotton scraps from the prior year. So again, there's a lot of moving pieces, and it's built upon the vision of domestic manufacturing and a transparent, equitable supply chain. So, when you start going down that path and you're able to find out about a potential plant that's grown in North Carolina that we can make a purple dye. Again, the industry's not going to see this because this does not fit in a global market. Literally, this is probably the only quarter this exists anywhere. But, if you had a global market, this would not, why would you do this and then ship this over to Asia to dye a t-shirt? Yeah. It's just not going to even the realm of work. But what we'll be able to do, not only do this, literally the farmer reached out to me 2 weeks ago, I think, because he saw our black walnut and said, what about X? And again, I can't tell you X right now, but you'll find out in a few weeks what X is. So what about X? And I says, let's try it. So he brought boxes of X, and I did that test yesterday, and we're going to do a bigger test next week because I found out brewing equipment is the perfect equipment to distill dyes because you're used to taking grains. You take the grains, they go away here, and then you take the fluid, becomes beer. Well, we will take the material, go away there, and then the instead of beer, it becomes a dye. So super excited about our plant-based dyes and what we can do with them and bring more people. This is the thing I was talking to the farmer yesterday, and we've already got this model through wearyourclothing.com, and we have this QR code that tracks it. We'll expand it. So if this works out, this will be part of the QR code tracking where this dye came from. That's what we want to do. And again, it's, it might work, it might not work, but we're focused on what other partners or suppliers that we can find in our state to make our t-shirts.
What do you see that does to a local economy? I mean, even from not just such a tactical, like economic standpoint, but as well as just the experience, the feeling of it, to have a really strong, like, localized economy like that. I like, what's the experience of the other business owners that you're involved with? It seems like the values, the ethics, and as well what it communicates in a sense of community is just a different experience than, money purely being spent and then sent outside of what's local, outside of the state, outside of the country. Well, what's the experience been for you and
what I
and
like
some of
to
your
say,
partners?
Corey, is the relationship is beyond a PO. When and this is true with anything. When you buy a product, and I do it with everybody, you buy something off of Amazon, you do it for service, you do it for price, but there's no relationship there. I don't know who you are. You just had the best price and do it. But when you have this local connected supply chain, literally I was taking the farmer that came up to drop this product X off to our brewery, to meet our brewer, to meet our chef, because I think there's a food base here, is the relationship just immediately goes so much deeper. Now, again, this might not work, but you've connected with somebody at a different level. I mean, if I've only connected with you because you have a product and a price, then probably the next person that comes along with a cheaper price, I'm going to forget who you are and move on. And so it goes back to where we talk, it's resiliency, it's connection, it just builds us. And then ultimately, this goes to what they call the multiplier effect of keeping your dollars in your community, because those dollars turn over and it shrinks in the community in which you live. I always like to say the farmer that does the grass-fed beef, everybody, it's grass-fed beef, mob grazing, all this stuff here. And you'll go to the, pre-COVID, these things, well, how are you going to scale this to feed the world? And Charlie said, I'm not interested in feeding the world. I'm interested in feeding my community. And, he's not interested in, having 1,000 head of cow and being in Whole Foods. He wants to just basically, he raises cows in Alamance County, where I live, and he sells his beef in Alamance County. And that's the model he wants. And I think it just, going back to the COVID thing, it just makes for a more resilient community. And, his beef goes to this brewery, and this is where we sell a $12 hamburger. And so we're able to pay those people who work there. They're definitely not paid they're paid a living wage and not a minimum wage. So it just builds on each other. This is not a McDonald's hamburger for 99 cents. This is a $12 hamburger, but we're able to pay people more. We're able to have a nicer place downtown. So it raises everybody in the community, and not just Charlie the farmer that grazes the beef. So it's just, again, I always like to say it's a relationship beyond the PO. The PO is just, we do POs and stuff, but back to our cotton farm, I've known them for 15 years. I know I'm working now with the third generation. The second that I started with, Ronnie's probably in his early 70s. Andrew's in his 30s. But I mean, it's a relationship that it goes so deep, and that really helps when you have those tough conversations on quality or price or whatever. There's more there than just, oh my gosh, this is what we agreed upon. You need to pay that, move on. I mean, it's the human nature perspective of having a more resilient, stronger supply chain. We're fortunate to be a part of that.
Yeah. And there is an obsession with scale, for some reason. And I think in the context of, what our buying and spending habits are, I do really like to think about, and I've heard you use the phrase before of voting with your dollar, but, casting a vote for what sort of world you want to live in, what sort of community you want to live in and enjoy and support. When we're traveling, be it domestically or internationally, it's like, what sort of things do we enjoy? It's like to sample local fare, independent breweries, a small scale, like localized restaurants. And I think that those are the things that we do really like to enjoy, independent bookstores, whatever it might be. And so in our day-to-day lives and our purchases, it's like, why can't we remind ourselves of that and support those things that, we find more culturally interesting? It's a different value than purely just that cost and price. And it really seems to be what you're strongly advocating for, is that that's just one component of the entire piece of the puzzle. It is one, price and cost, but it is one component of the whole conversation.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. When you travel, you're interested in the unique coffee shop, bookstore, whatever. I mean, we all have our Starbucks, we all have our Targets, as Anywhere USA. And I always like to have Starbucks gets enough of my money when I go to the airport, but other than that, I don't go to Starbucks because there's nothing unique, nothing connection. So that's what we're doing. That was another reason solid state. We want to have that one-on-one connection. Literally had somebody a couple of weeks ago that bought one of our, how we doing, Keith? Get all done? Good. Thank you. I'll catch up with you shortly. All right. Appreciate it. Bought one of our black walnut t-shirts, sent me an email, came up from Durham about 30 miles away. We sat down and had lunch. This is the brewery in which we brewed the black walnuts. I took him down to the dye house 4 blocks away. We dyed it. Just having that, he saw the value, and because of that value he paid, I think those shirts, somebody would say, oh my gosh, how can you get $70? And I can tell you that there's a lot of money it takes to get that shirt made. And he's fortunate in a place in his life that he can afford that. But hopefully by him buying that $70 t-shirt, that'll allow us to scale this thing. Because again, there is a thing of economies to scale. Again, the same thing with Product X purple dye. Those first couple shirts will be sick because we got a lot of money that we're having to spend for the R&D. But we want to be very transparent with that because we want this to scale beyond us. We want to grow our business, but we want to share this. We want other people. We would like to see a Nike be able to dye with this purple dye if it works out. We're not locking it up because ultimately we know, if a brand does this purple dye, then everybody wins. It's better for the environment. It's better for the farmer. So that's we're back to that transparent. We want other people to succeed with our model, and that's why we're big into transparency. We're happy to share this with people.
Yeah, and it's not so much even just about the materials at scale, but I think investing in low wage labor or products produced with low wage labor. If we continue to invest in low wage labor, then spending power is not going to increase at all. And so maybe things start to balance out at all different levels of scale. Likewise with the difference in wage. But Eric, I really want to be respectful of your time. Thank you so much once again. Just before we wrap up, you mind if I ask you a few rapid fire questions?
Sure, because slow internet, we got a long way to upload here. So yes, you fire away and I'll try to hang on.
All right. So first one for you, is there maybe a book, film, or some other resource that's really impacted you recently, or something you always come back to that you might recommend to our listeners? Can be about what we've chatted about here or something completely different.
Golly, I've read so many books on sustainability, but one always stuck in my head is Ray Anderson's Mid-Course Correction. And this was about a guy in Atlanta, had a carpet company and realized the damage his company was doing to the environment and just took a turn. And Ray and I became very close personal friends. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago with cancer, and he probably wrote the book 10, 15 years ago, but it's still it's Ray Anderson, Mid-Course Corrections, just one of the many sustainable books, but I highly recommend it from a business perspective, why we need to change.
Excellent. A next one for you, Eric. Are there any particular morning routines or daily habits that you feel like you have to stick to?
I always like my good coffee in the morning. So,
is that coffee from a local producer?
Oh yeah, it's going to. Well, unfortunately, it's going to be local producers. Give a few more years of climate change, we might grow coffee, but right now it's important. Yes, it's going to be fair trade, organic, locally roasted, good coffee, and my NPR news from our local station WUNC, which is in Chapel Hill, which is 30 miles away.
Excellent. And then a next one for you. Are there any particular businesses, individuals, or organizations who in your field you feel like are doing some really exceptional work that you think are deserving of a plug?
Oh my gosh. That's a tough one. I hate to start in a list. There's a lot of people in the apparel industry, that I work with or support. We got the folks from farm to feet that have a similar model in the manufacturing of their socks, all domestic, transparent supply chain. So excited about, working with those folks. As I said, I live on a farm, so I'm very connected to the local food movement. There's a restaurant in our community called Saxon General Store, which is not only buys a lot of our product, but serves a lot of local food. So spend a lot of, my local food dollars there. And then another big hangout is Burlington Beer Works, which I'm very excited that I helped get started. And it's when we open, our 3rd year anniversary is in March. When we opened, it was the 10th cooperatively owned brewery in the country. The first one was Black Star in Texas. We now have over 3,000 owners. And we did that intentionally to start a brewery that will stay in this community, because I am one of the first owners. But if somebody else came an owner today, they have the same rights and privileges I got. So we potentially made this so it will stay in downtown Burlington. It will be Burlington Beer Works, because now you've got to answer to now 3,000 owners. So very excited what we've done. And it's been a key to the redevelopment of our downtown, which was devastated through shopping malls and strip shopping centers. Local food focus, great beer, great place to hang out. So whenever you come to North Carolina, that's where I'll definitely take you.
Perfect. All right. I'll take you up on that. And
yes, please.
A final one for you, Eric. What's maybe one piece of advice that you might leave our listeners with? These folks are social entrepreneurs, change makers from all sectors all over the world, wanting to leave things better than they found it.
And I said it earlier, and I can give them a tagline for many years. Sustainability is a journey, not a destination. And just understand, constantly be aware of change, how you can impact and improve, but it's a journey. And I'm encouraged that anybody's along that spectrum on that journey, I want to support, I want to help. There's people way ahead of me. There's people behind me, but it is a journey. You're never going to get there, at least in my lifetime. I will never become what they call, 100% sustainable. I'm taking more away from the planet than I'm giving back. But my goal is to do a better job every day that I'm on this planet to be more sustainable. So it is a journey, not a destination.
Wonderful advice for us to end on. And last thing, Eric, where do you want to direct folks to keep up with you and the work that you're doing with TS Designs and Solid State? Where should they go?
I would say email is the easiest thing to remember. Eric, ERIC, at T as in Tom, S as in Sam, Designs, DESIGNS.com. I'm definitely very active on LinkedIn. TS Designs has a social media presence. Solid State has a social media presence. But if you connect with me at that email address, I can get you anywhere you want to go.
Perfect. All right. We'll have all things linked up in our show notes at socialentrepreneurship.fm. Thanks a lot, Eric.
Corey, thank you so much for your time and opportunity. This has been great. Appreciate it.